Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Hey, everybody. Medical insurance did not cover 14-year-old Adonica Black's deadly brain cancer surgery, so her family relentlessly advocated to the very top international medical professionals. Miraculously, Adonica's surgery was successfully performed by none other than the world-renowned surgeon, Dr. Ben Carson, who was a pioneer in the field of neurosurgery at the time. She not only survived, she thrived and began her list of firsts, including the first in her family to go to Duke University. She became an attorney at 24 and now holds the title of Director of Development and Inclusion at LexisNexis, where she's the first to form a fellowship with all 6 of the HBCU Law School Consortium schools and directs a fellowship partnering with HBCU law schools at LexisNexis Legal and Professional. You can reach Adonica on LinkedIn at Adonica Black, and her email is adonica.black@gmail.com if you want to contact her. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Sandi. Today I'm speaking to Adonica Black. I think I've known Adonica most of her life, but not really know Adonica most of her life. So today we're going to get to know Adonica a little bit better. And I know her Aunt Claudette, who brags about her all the time. So Adonica, welcome to the first with Dr. Sandi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandi. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me on your show today.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing, why you're the first in something and what you're the first of. And let's get started.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, I think we've known each other most of my life through my Aunt Claudette. She's been a big inspiration in my life. So I'll tell you a bit about myself and what I'm the first at. I am firstly the first child for my parents. So my parents have 5 children together. When they were married, they've since divorced, and then my stepdad has 5 children. My dad has another daughter as well. So I'm the first of 11.
And how is that? How is that to be, kind of the head of your clan, your little mini clan? How's that?
Yeah, it's funny. So I brought up my aunt because she's also the first in her family. So Auntie Claudette is the first child for her parents who had 5 children, my mom being their youngest child. And it's what's the word? It is a blessing and a responsibility. To be the first child, I think a lot of people can relate. There's just a lot of expectations and responsibility of you. And then, it kind of shapes who you are as a person, your identity. For me, for sure, it's shaped my personal identity of being someone who has to kind of pave the way and support those that are younger and kind of coming behind me. So I think that has bled itself into a lot of who I am as a person.
Well, let me challenge that. Is it because you're the first or the first girl?
That's a good question. Probably the latter. I think first sisters especially end up having like a different kind of responsibility. My family lovingly calls me like the sister mother because I'm like the second mother to everyone. So I think it is definitely a little bit of being the first girl too.
Because if you were first boy, I think the responsibility side is a little different or probably non-existent.
Yeah.
Probably non-existent because girls, I'm the first girl, and my brother is the first, and he's a
Hmm.
boy. He does
Mm.
not get, let me tell you, he does
At
not
the
get
same
the
level.
same responsibilities as I do being the first girl.
Yeah, I always wonder about that. And it's funny because I have like a few of my family members, we have like the First Sisters Club. So one of my cousins that I'm really close to, she's the first child and first daughter for her parents. And then even one of my little nieces, she's 7, but she's the first in her for her family of 3 children. And no matter what age or stage, you have a different level of like position and responsibility in your family. So I actually saw her over the weekend, both my cousin and my niece, and I took her out with me just for the day. And I was like, this is the First Sisters Club. Like you get a chance to just get to be you. And her little perception was amazing. Like she's such a responsible child at 7 years old. And she said, she's like, this is so much fun because I get a chance to just relax. I was like, wow, at 7 years old, like already you understand the dynamics of your responsibility, which is
And
pretty
I
amazing.
really think, Adonica, that I'm a middle child.
Yeah,
I'm a middle child, but when you're the first girl, you behave like the first child
yeah, it's true.
because you take on that responsibility it's endowed, right? It's put
Yeah,
upon you. It's not one you wanted, it's not one you asked for, but as the first female, the expectation is you're going to be the responsible one.
yeah,
You're going to lead. You're going to take over. Even if I have an older brother, and I can tell you, he was playing soccer and playing whatever, but the home stuff and taking care of my little sister, that was on me.
yeah, it is. And then, it becomes, at least for me, it becomes like a part of my identity that I think I carry into other spaces.
Yes,
And it is, I think, ultimately a good thing, but there are responsibilities and things that you have to be kind of aware of as well. So you're right. Like you said, we never chose it for ourselves, right? But it is who we are. And so then it ends up being something that we have to just
correct.
kind of lead into if we can. But I will say that I've also started to set boundaries because in addition to being the first, you end up being kind of the one that is relied upon the most, right? And like I said, I've got a big family just of siblings, and then I've got a big extended family, and I end up being literally like that first call. It's funny because I'm also the first lawyer in my immediate family. So that adds another layer to it when people are like,
Regardless of what kind of law you do, you're
yeah,
the family lawyer.
I'm the family lawyer too. Exactly. So, I've definitely had to kind of I love it. I really appreciate being that person for my family, but I've also had to set boundaries in terms of enabling them to help themselves, give them the
Yes,
information to do what
yes.
they need to do, and also prove to me like you've done something to help yourself along. So I'm not just doing it for you. So
Good
because
for
I found for myself, like I have to keep my own energy up. I have to pour into myself. I have to be able to accomplish what I've set out to do for my life. And that means I have to be able to pour into myself, which means I can't pour everything into others. So
right.
being able to establish those boundaries, I think, has been an evolution for me and my personality, because as the first, you definitely want to be like the one, there's just something there. You want to be that empathetic, kind of caring person for everyone. And I still am. I just want to make sure that I'm also being caring by helping you help yourself too,
They say you have to, that whole flight attendant analogy, what you have to put on your oxygen
Yes,
mask first
exactly.
before you take care of the other people on your flight. It's the same thing.
It's so
You
true.
have to make sure, and I suck at it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I feel like it was a lot of my own self-inflicted kind of telling myself, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can set that boundary. I've never done it before. There was a little bit of fear there. And also a bit of like thinking about, okay, if I'm not that person that's doing everything for everyone, then like, who am I? What is my value? And I really had to work through that for myself to recognize that I have value just being who I am, and no fear around setting those boundaries, because I expected I would have pushback. I expected people would be upset to hear that I'm no longer going to be doing everything for them. But I was really pleasantly surprised. I feel like when I shared that with my family, that I was feeling drained in some ways, they got it and they respected it. And they were just like,
Right.
okay, we'll just do it a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So that was like an eye-opener for me.
What's one boundary that you set that
Oh,
really?
that's a good question. So just things like, let's see, often, okay, because I'm a lawyer, I write pretty well. There may be essays that need to be done, or applications, or those things that need to happen for everyone. And before, it was like, oh, I have this assignment. Can you do it for me? It was like, okay, I'm going to try to fit this into my 10
Yeah,
other things I need to do today. And now it's been, okay, show me what you've done and I will enhance it
yeah,
together. We'll work on it together, and people respect it. And I think it's better that way, because now they can help themselves too, so that's just like an isolated example I could think of, but
yeah.
in that way, just really kind of releasing that part of the first responsibility.
Skill. It's a skill, it's a learned skill that you have
Absolutely.
to keep working at it. I know I started doing that. I'm the yes girl, right? I say
Yes,
yes, yes,
exactly.
okay, okay. Because I hate for when I know I can do
Yep.
something that I don't do it. And it's not that you're not doing it, it's you're giving them the opportunity to learn for themselves, and then they can come to you and you'll say, okay,
Absolutely.
this was well done. Or I'll tweak it a little bit here
Yeah.
or there. And next time you know how to do it, or learn how to put Grammarly on your.
Yeah, all of those things, right? And I think it's like it's so much better, because then people have their own sense of pride of accomplishing things and feeling like they can do something too. They just have to rely on me or someone else to do it for them. So I think it's an evolution that I'm still learning, right? Because there's still moments where I'm like, I'll just do it. And then I'm like, no, no, no. Let me show you how to do it so that you
That,
can make sure
that
you do it again.
for me, that went over into my work.
Yes, absolutely.
And I had to learn to not, especially when you become an employer, you have
Yeah,
to let people do it for them. Fail forward. I call it fail forward, because even if it's wrong, you did something, and then we can build on that. And I always tell them, it's not wrong. It's not a big mistake. It just wasn't done correctly. So we'll just do it over,
yeah,
or do it the right way. And I think that made a big difference. But you mentioned that
100%.
you were ill at one point. So how did you continue to be the everything to everybody when you were yourself needed taking care of? How did
Yeah, yeah. So when I was 14, I was diagnosed with brain cancer. I had an astrocytoma in my brainstem. And the way that I even learned of my diagnosis, the whole thing, honestly, I refer to as a miracle, because I had been having neck pains and kind of tightness in my neck and back area for months. And I remember just kind of waking up every morning, putting heat packs on my back, going into the hot shower to try to loosen up those muscles. My mom took me to a couple doctors who said I had scoliosis and did chiropractic adjustments, and just different things that kind of was not addressing the real issue. And then I particularly remember one morning, and I remember this morning because it was the morning after I took the PSAT, is when I was in high school. So, academics is really important to me and was really important to me in high school. And I think that morning I had a chemistry AP or biology AP exam that I had been studying for. So, long backstory to say, I woke up that morning and I couldn't move. I
wow.
was in so much pain. I went to the bathroom right across the hall from my bedroom, And my sister's bedroom was right next to the bathroom. And I was like, it was about maybe 6 o'clock in the morning because school starts early, getting ready for school. And I'm like calling out for her because I couldn't physically get up off of the toilet when I was in the bathroom.
Wow.
And she had always been that person for me. I was 14. She's 4 years younger than me. So she's about 10. And she'd always been that person that I would like support me, right? So I would call to her if I had like pain in the morning, and she would help me in the shower. She's actually now currently studying in medical school. So that was one of her formative experiences of wanting to be a doctor and providing care. But that morning I called to her and I'm like, please help me into the shower. And I never wanted to like really alarm my parents about it. And she was like, no, I'm calling mommy, I'm calling daddy, like something is really wrong here. And so I'm like, no, like they're gonna make me go to the doctor and I don't have time to do that today. I have an exam, I'll do it tomorrow. And she was like, no, I'm calling mommy and daddy. And they came up to the bathroom, saw me literally like in the bathroom, couldn't get up. And so my mom was like, okay, we're going to the ER. My mom is a nurse. And so she worked at the hospital that we went to that morning. And she asked the doctors, you know, she's been having these issues, please give her an MRI. And the doctors were saying that there was no kind of emergent need for an MRI. Like there was no indicator to do that. And, you know, that's a commentary, I guess, on our healthcare system.
Yes.
But she knew the ER doctor and she was like, please, like, I will wait for it. I will pay for it. Even though my mom was a nurse working 2 different hospitals, had 2 different insurance carriers. So we were doubly covered, but the insurance didn't want to pay for it. So there was no emergent need, etc. Long story short, the doctor was like, okay, you're going to have to wait until we can get into the MRI because there's no apparent need. So we ended up waiting. I think we got to the hospital at about 7 a.m. and we waited till almost 4 p.m. that afternoon. And this just to show you kind of like the mindset, right? At 14, I was upset because I was like, I could have gone to school. I could have came back in time. Like I could have taken this exam and I have to study again for it. And my mom was like, pretty much, you'll be fine. You'll make it later. And I'm so grateful to her for pushing that because in the MRI, it showed that I did have a brain tumor and it was like a light switch on and off, right? Immediately, the doctor, all of the ER residents, some doctors from other floors, people that my mom knew as a nurse there in the hospital, everyone was in this ER bay when they found out what my diagnosis was. And I ended up, that was at West Boca Hospital in Boca Raton, Florida, where I grew up.
So let me ask you this. Did the insurance pay for it after they found out it was a tumor?
No, well, so I can tell you the whole saga. I always talk with my family about that needs to be a Lifetime movie at some point because it truly is a dramatic story. I ended up getting airlifted by helicopter from West Boca because there was no doctor there that was equipped to handle my tumor. I was lifted to Miami Children's Hospital, and the neurologist and neurosurgeon there looked at my scans, and basically, according to my parents, all of the blood left his face, and he was like, he can't operate on me. If he did, I had a 5% chance of surviving, and if I did survive, I would be a paraplegic with a trach, unable to walk, talk, incontinent for my life. So his prognosis was dismal. And so my mom sent my MRI results with the help of my Auntie Claudette, who really is, again, one of those leaders in my life, and sent it to my aunt Angela, who is a doctor. She was a doctor for the Reagan and Clinton administration in DC. So she's well connected in the DC area. And she sent my MRI to Johns Hopkins, to Dr. Ben Carson and to his neurosurgeon team. And I think at the time there was like a neurosurgeon conference happening in Europe, I think. So those scans were shared there. And it was just a miracle, really, to have all of those people together at that time to look at my scans to say, okay, this is how we would approach this, because they were the best neurosurgeons in the world. So where my Miami children's doctor had not seen this before, so he just didn't feel comfortable taking on the case.
Right.
These doctors were the best in the world, and we're like, this is how we deal with this kind of a case. So Dr. Carson and his team accepted my case. And then there was the insurance fight. So to your question, my mom, made the request, I guess, to transfer me to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. And the insurance fought back, saying that the bed at the hospital is cheaper in Miami than it is in Baltimore.
Oh my God.
They don't want to authorize my transfer to this hospital that could actually save my life.
Give you the money that they would give to you in Miami and deduct it from whatever the bed is.
According to them, because it went all the way up to the president of the insurance company at the time, that was a company that's since been acquired by another insurance company, but they said, this was in October of 2004. It's near the end of the year, and direct quote, our executive bonuses come out of the profit we're able to retain for the year. So we're not inclined to approve this authorization.
Did you write an article on this?
I'm going to write a book one day for sure. It's just been, and you know what, I'll share with you, I have a couple newspaper clippings from that time period. The Sun Centennial from Florida covered it in a couple other publications there. But I was going to a school there, Pinecrest School in Fort Lauderdale, exceptional school, one of the top schools in the country. I think it's number 2 in the country of schools. And there's a great, well-connected network there. And so one of my classmates, I had just been to her birthday party right before that fateful morning. And my mom shared what was happening with the school community, and she's well-connected in the political organizations. And so she wrote to Governor Jeb Bush at the time, who she knew personally, and basically lobbied on my behalf, saying this is an election year and we don't want this, we don't want this problem, and you need to make this happen. And so Jeb Bush actually called the president of that insurance company on his private plane to tell him, you need to authorize this person to be treated. And my doctor in Baltimore also wrote to them stating that when the wrongful death lawsuit ensues because of my wrongful death, he would be on the side of the plaintiff. So it literally was a drama of people who were in my support and in my network, and angels really, to make sure that I was able to be treated. I'm here now, I can walk, I can talk, I can speak. I do have some lasting kind of deficits in my left hand and just kind of ongoing arthritis and pain in my neck, but I can live with it. I'm alive.
Exactly.
So it's just truly a miracle. And I'm so grateful to all of those people who really made sure that I was taken care of. My mom, of course, she was like a champion. She was just not taking no from anyone for her child, and just kind of led an amazing group of people to really make sure that I could be here today,
but lesson in advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really was a transformative kind of formative experience for me that made me, of course, a healthcare advocate. I remember afterwards going with my aunt who lives in the DC area to lobby Congress for universal healthcare when that was passed. And just really always in my life trying to be that advocate however I can, because I benefited from that in my own life. But it's just also, like you said, it's a commentary on so many systems that exist. And it truly is, it's disheartening in a way to think about people that this has probably happened to who didn't have that network. Yeah.
And this is America, right?
Yeah.
This is not a third world country someplace where you don't have access. And this is with access to healthcare.
Yes.
And
with 2 insurances, right? 2 insurances, a middle class background, and people are still like, it's just, I don't know what the words are for it.
But
But
what if you're at the bottom of the barrel?
Exactly.
Right? Low man on the totem pole, financially and otherwise.
Yeah, 100%.
Without connections, without anything. You just sit there and watch your life go by. and
And
go.
I think that's unacceptable. And so no matter who you are, no matter what money you have, you know, like, it's your life. And so I really am a big advocate of healthcare, and just accessibility, and making this a much more equitable system, because it's not right now, you know?
I've
So
seen other countries. I went to Sweden, and I'm flabbergasted as to
yeah.
why we are such a powerful company and cannot have healthcare, universal healthcare for
Well, you
everyone.
know, it's funny, I don't know if you noticed that bit of a slip. You just said powerful company. But I
Well,
think in
we
that
are a
country,
company. We
but
are
it
a
is a
company.
company, right? It is a
We are
company.
a business.
Exactly.
America is a business. It's the business of
Exactly.
America.
And I totally agree. Like, it's a, I guess, a reflection of the companies that have control in this in this country. Um, and you know, I have to be grateful for all of the opportunities I've had, but I think to be a true kind of patriot to this country, you have to be able to critique and criticize where feedback is necessary to
Yeah,
improve.
absolutely. I agree with that. And this is one place that I don't have a full understanding
Yeah,
of what what it is. Canada has a healthcare. I mean, even if they're false with their system, people can go and get the care that they need.
yeah,
They're not dependent on, I'm working and I don't have the right level of healthcare. I've run into that where they're
yeah,
like, we don't
same.
take we do take like Empire Blue Cross, but we don't that
Yeah,
particular plan. Like,
exactly.
okay, you're my doctor, and I don't take that plan for this, but I take it for that.
Yeah. And you know what? Even for the doctors, like, I have quite a few friends who are doctors. My sisters are in med school now, family members who are doctors. And it's not a fair system for them either. Like, there are doctors who are dealing with it on the other side with their patients who they can't treat or don't have enough resources, when they are treating them. And it's just, for everyone on each side, it's just not working. It's not working.
I was looking for a gynecologist because my gynecologist decided to retire and move, and how dare he? So all of a sudden, I had to go look for a gynecologist, and several people referred me to this one woman, and I got there, and she said, "Well, I don't take health care.
Yeah.
I don't take insurance." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" She said,
Yeah.
"I don't take insurance. You have to pay, out of pocket." And oh,
Yeah.
okay, I was already there. So go ahead and check me and I'll pay this $600 or
Yep.
whatever it is. But then when it's time for me to get my next healthcare, thank God there was nothing physically wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with me, just an annual checkup.
Mm-hmm.
What if there was something wrong?
Yep.
I couldn't continue to go to you. And for the annual, I'm like, no, I'm finding another doctor.
Yeah. And you know, for that doctor, imagine what that person has been through to have to decide to not to take insurance. It's just, the system is not how it should be right now for healthcare. And this is like a life necessity, right? So it has to be improved.
All of that
Yeah.
impacts your siblings and the younger people below you. What effect did that
Yeah.
have on them?
So for me, right, because I was so young, I was 14 years old, it's something that's given me perspective in life. And so in general, the way that I approach things, it's just different because I have the perspective that this is not going to end my life, right? Like, if something happens that's that's negative, I have the perspective to understand, okay, you can work through this, and every challenge has a solution. And I think that perspective has led the younger generation by example in my family and in my community, because I, you know, like, being the older sister, as well as kind of being the eldest in my community, for a lot of people, sharing that perspective of you can do whatever you need to do, having the perspective of if you have an adversity, understanding the level of adversity and how to work through it. I think that those lessons have definitely been shared with my generation. And it's interesting because growing up, I was like the babysitter in my neighborhood for the neighborhood kids in my
Another
community.
babysitter. I think almost every podcast I've done with a woman,
As
they
a babysitter. Yeah, especially as that
good way to start making money.
it absolutely. So from 13 years old, where I don't know if that's allowed or not, but I was.
Not
But
today.
it's funny because I already had my four siblings growing up, and then just the neighborhood community, like the way that it works in our community, all of the kids would come to our house because they were like, well, there's already four kids there, we know we're gonna have a good time. Like, so that ended up being like the center of a lot of households. And so now everyone is in their early to mid 20s and growing up. And so I've gone back home and seen these individuals now as young adults, and every single child, the now young adults, has said to me, like, you were like my mom too, like you really
Oh,
shaped
that's
me
so
as well, which is so moving because it's something that I didn't anticipate. It wasn't something that I like planned as a child, but to know that you've had that impact is pretty amazing. And so they've all shared kind of like, your influence has made me want to do certain things in my life, so some want to be lawyers, some are lawyers now, some are kind of working to advance their own education in the different fields, or just really having a purpose for their lives. And I
yeah.
think they all kind of grew up knowing like, oh, Adonica was sick and she got better and she's doing all of these things and she's helped me to do things too, so I can do it too.
Yes.
That's meaningful for
Thank
sure.
God for you, and thank God you came through.
Thank God. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank God.
That's an amazing
Absolutely.
story. I'm telling you, there is a lifetime story in that.
I think so. It's funny because just my life in general, I think, has been just a miraculous life. And so one day for sure, it's funny. My dad asked me, like, when are you going to write your book? I was like, well, I'm not done writing it yet. Like I'm not done living yet, but maybe the first edition
You
for
should.
sure.
Yes, you should chat. It's just the first book should just be around that.
Yeah,
And then you
absolutely.
can add on. I'm doing my second book. I have about 20 books inside of me.
I love that.
I'm
I love that.
of all different parts. I have a children's book. I have my second business book. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to be a novel about business.
Ooh, okay.
My business partner and we've been starting to write this thing, and
So I'm gonna have to
yeah,
reach out to you and ask for tips.
yeah.
That's the thing that I'm
Oh,
just like, okay, how do I sit down and start this? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
There are a lot of classes now, and I know I've taken a lot of publishing, how to publish. I'll send you Women in
yeah,
Publishing,
please. I would love that.
because it's
Absolutely.
really helpful to get those tips. So now that you came through all of this and you wind up going into Duke University, that takes a lot.
It does. It does. It's, Duke is one of the, I think, top 5 schools in the country.
Yeah.
I went there for undergrad, graduated in 2011, and it was an amazing experience in education. I made some of my best friends there. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work.
When you got sick, how long did it take you? How much time did you spend in the hospital? Did you miss
Yeah.
school? Did you, you
So
know,
I did. I was in the hospital for probably, I'd say altogether, maybe close to 2 months. And then of course, afterwards, I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to kind of function again because I did have kind of some extremities deficits and I had to do a lot of physical therapy. So it was maybe a 6 to 8 month long kind of recovery. So my school, Pinecrest, they were so supportive, like just truly a family. And once I was finally kind of out of the hospital and ready to try to start re-engaging, they sent me like, the most pertinent lessons that I'd missed. So I was able to kind of work on them at home. So I was able to stay on track, right? So I could graduate on time.
oh,
So
that's nice.
it was wonderful. It was really amazing. So I missed that, like there was, I think it was, what was this, quarters? So semester or something. I can't remember how that was. I missed a couple of those, but they ended up sending me like all of the testing that I needed to do and all of the lesson plans so I could stay on track. So I was able to continue school. And that was I think that was sophomore year, which when thinking about college, sophomore year, junior year are like the most important years.
Yes.
So coming back into junior year, I had to work really hard to make sure that I was able to perform to go to school at Duke.
And you got through all of that, and now you're forming a fellowship. Tell
Yeah.
me more about this fellowship with the HBCUs.
Yeah, well, I do want to mention for Duke, I'm still really engaged. So I'm also one of the first, I guess, in my immediate network to be appointed to the board there at the university now. So I'm on the board of the school, and it's exciting because I'm a part of who I am is really thinking about kind of how do I help the next generation. So I'm hoping in that role to really support young women, particularly women of color, and all of the university community, but I'll definitely keep a special focus for
Yes,
the
we need
community that
more women on
represents me.
boards.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my current role, I currently work for LexisNexis as Director of Global Talent Development and Inclusion. And so in my role, we are in our second year of a program called the LexisNexis African Ancestry Network and LexisNexis Rule of Law Foundation Fellowship. It's a fellowship program that we started in 2021 in partnership with the 6 HBCU law schools in our country. So those schools are Howard University Law School, Thurgood Marshall School of Law, University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law, Southern University Law Center, and North Carolina Central University School of Law, and Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University College of Law. So I just want to make sure to, acknowledge them in this groundbreaking work. Of course, all my opinions shared are my own, but I'm, just really excited to be partnering with them in this program where we have basically brought in fellows from their schools to work on advancing the rule of law by eliminating systemic racism in the legal system. So our fellows are focused on projects that they propose to eliminate systemic racism in the legal system. And they're really doing groundbreaking work around a few different subject matter areas. First, equity for youth in the legal system, thinking about how Black youth in particular encounter the legal system and how to make it a positive encounter experience. So addressing their school to prison pipeline, as well as making the legal profession a more attractive, attainable, and accessible profession for that community. And that leads us into looking at our next focus, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion in legal education. So looking at how are lawyers being educated and how do we make that a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive education so that we have, more diverse practitioners, which of course will lead to better outcomes for their diverse clients. And then that leads to our third focus, which is diversity in leadership of the legal profession. So who are the leaders in your law firms, in your different law offices or legal practitioner organizations, and supporting diversity in those particular roles.
Well,
And then
cradle to grave kind of.
I'm sorry, say that?
I call it cradle to grave. It's looking at,
yes,
from the beginning, how Black people are treated by the legal system. Because right now, if you have a record, you can't become a lawyer.
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
it's starting up front to cure that portion of it to make sure they're treated fairly. And if we get into the system, it's because it's a fair thing that got us into the system, but keeping us out of the system. And then as you move along that continuum, it's how you're treated in court,
Yep.
up to becoming a lawyer, and then into the companies where the lawyers are. So it's a full continuum.
It's true. You get it perfectly. We've often thought about this program as really that like full scale pipeline of, how are you interacting with the legal system and how do we eliminate racism in this system to make it more equitable for everyone. And to your point, exactly, when we look at the kind of other, what we're calling clusters focusing on this legal system, we then are looking at diversity and equity in the courts. So who's on the bench? How are decisions being made? Inquiring and really also underlining any potential bias with data. So that's, I think, one of the unique factors of the company that I work for, to be able to offer that technological capability to support these advancements. And then we're also looking at equity in the criminal justice system, as well as racial equity in wealth and ownership, which really underpins all of these connected pieces of the legal system, where there has to be, there just has to be substantiation around what we all know and have experienced. So our ultimate goal is to provide that data, those analytics, those resources to support making improvements in these areas. So where people have outlined the issue and stated, we don't know enough about the problem, or we don't have enough data, or we don't have a way to fix this, we are really being very practical and incremental in how we're approaching doing something about these issues.
So if you get all this data, you have all this information, who sees it?
Yeah, so our fellows are published. Our first year fellows have been published in a publication coming from LexisNexis, and our second year fellows will be published as well. And so we're looking forward to having a symposium this year in October in Washington, D.C., where we'll have our fellows presenting two executives, two leaders in the legal community in DC, two practitioners, on the findings they've made in their fellowship program. And the goal really is, like you said, to amplify what they've uncovered so that these leaders in the community can take that information and do something with it, make changes, and through our foundation, really connecting all of these dots. So we are looking to also think about, how do we globally expand this opportunity, because LexisNexis is a global organization. So we're looking at other areas of the world where we can make a footprint in advancing the rule of law, because we're really serious about doing something with tangible effect. I think that's really the key differentiator for this program, is that we are looking to have measurable impact.
I don't think it should stop with just a publication, because who reads these publications? I'm not kidding. This is why I'm not I'm not into the publish or perish thing.
Got it.
Because the people who are reading it are not the people who it truly should impact, right?
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of stuff my friends publish. I really just don't. But if you put it in a more practical space, like magazines, okay, Inc. 500, or those Fortune magazine, like places where the mass of people are going to be there and going to look at this, and then can take action on it in other companies, in other places. Send them on a speaking circuit where they go around and speak, because just keeping it in that legal community does not help. Really.
You are definitely in our brains here, because so our fellows absolutely understand that, right? Like, they're thinking about, how does their generation access this information? So they are absolutely putting it out there in social media as well. We have a couple of mini film projects that are planned out of the work that they've developed. And then we also are looking at, how do we amplify this to mainstream media? So we are really excited that with the symposium, we're going to have some great kind of media personalities there that will be able to hopefully amplify the message. And I think you're absolutely right. One of the main objectives of the program is to amplify them, right? Amplify these future leaders of the legal profession. So one of our goals really is to provide this speaking circuit of what will be 30 fellows. We've had 12 in our first year and grew 50% in our second year to 18, to now be able to amplify these diverse legal voices, so that when people are saying, we just don't know where to find the talent, we don't know how to get that perspective, we can tell you, here are 30 people to give you that perspective. So that's absolutely an objective. which I think
And
is
the
going to
common
be a game
everyday
changer.
man should know that this is going on,
Yeah,
that work is
absolutely.
being done, and that we will be impacted, the everyday person, when we go into a courtroom for
Yes.
whatever reason, that we'll feel that equity is there or someone is working
Yeah.
for
And
advocacy.
it's so true. So even one of our projects, like you just brought up going into a courtroom, one of our projects is focused on helping pro se litigants, right? When you go into a courtroom and you may
Tell
be,
me what pro se
yeah. So
litigants
pro
are.
se litigants are people who represent themselves, like pro se meaning like for self.
Yes.
If you have to represent yourself in some kind of court proceeding, oftentimes the pro se litigants end up being people who don't have access to funds to get
Yes.
someone to represent
Yes.
themselves. So we have a project that's working on a mobile app that will actually make it more just understandable of how do you navigate this system if you have to do it for yourself. So those are the kind of projects that we're thinking about where we really want to address both like the legal practitioner community, but also those who are affected by the legal system as well. And thinking about both sides of that coin of how do we eliminate racism that exists in the system based on all people who have to interact with that legal system.
I've given myself a goal. I've only been in a courtroom when I have jury duty.
Okay.
And I think that the average common person, we're not just going into the courtroom like, or
Yeah.
maybe if you have someone on trial, you'll go to the courtroom. But I did go. Larry was having a trial once and I went, my husband. But I have not gone into two places voluntarily. The police station.
Okay.
I went once and I panicked because my nephew called me and said I'm at the police station and I didn't hear anything else.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
literally hung up and ran to the station, and it was really for a good thing. I went in thinking, you
Something
know,
was wrong.
a black man in the
Yep.
police station. And so I went in and I walked in and said, "Oh, this is like NYPD, law and order, law." Because
Absolutely.
we don't know what happens in the police station.
Yeah.
We don't go unless we have to, and it's usually a negative. And I think schools should take, especially young Black boys, and show them what goes on in the police legal system. It's part of the legal system,
Yeah.
right? And
Absolutely.
then take them to watch a case in a courtroom where not they're not involved, nobody they know is involved. Just how does the court run,
Exactly. And
right?
that's exactly so the first group that I mentioned, kind of youth in legal in the legal system, that's exactly what we're focused on, right? So looking at how do we make the legal profession and the practice of law more visible and accessible as well as more attractive for a young person. Because like you said, usually people think of what they see on TV
Yeah.
or maybe a negative experience that they've had personally or with their family. And so we really want to turn that on their head to explain, what is the legal system? What is it to be a lawyer? Give you visibility to Black lawyers because representation matters and understanding matters. So we're really looking at exactly what you said. So we actually have another fellow working on a program where we're looking at Miranda rights and kind of, if you're being asked questions, if you're being detained, what does it mean to have Miranda rights, but working at it through a lens of a child. So helping to explain through
Yes.
a mobile app that we're developing, kind of like, what does it mean if you're stopped and how do you deal with that as a child? Because
Wow.
children are dealing with it. So we really are hoping to really impact all of these parts of the system in a really holistic way, because that's one of the things we've uncovered through this program is that it requires like multiple touches. There's no one size fits all. We will continue to improve and enhance based on everything that we learn. And we're looking for support, right? So we're looking for people who are leaders or active in the community to join us in this effort, because I think we all will benefit, not just Black people. I think everyone will benefit from a more equitable
Yes.
system.
Absolutely. I could talk to you forever, but that time has come.
I know. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sandi. This has been such an awesome conversation. And I think when we first spoke, you helped me to understand like the first that I had in my life. And it was just amazing because I was like, oh, you're right. I think I did have that as like one of the first. So I thank you for having me join you today.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and to have you here. And when you write your book, you'll come back.
Absolutely, I will, and I'm going to be reaching out because I need your help with that. So, but you can tell me how to do it. You don't have to do it for me. As an older sister, yeah.
There you go. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you again, Dr. Sandi. Have a great day. Thank you.
This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.